Johnny, you look so warm.
Oh, well, listen, Dave. With all this chilly weather out there, I will do anything to stay cozy. You know that about me. Yeah. I keep a hot drink beside my bed.
Yep.
Okay, a hot wife beside me.
Hey,
come on. My slippers on, and I always have the latest cold weather necessities made from premium materials from Quince.
That's right. Quince is the best, John. I also want to say I appreciate you no longer chasing our pets around the neighborhood.
I don't need them anymore. I've got Quince now.
Anymore. It scared us there for a minute. True quality, affordable price. I just grabbed Quince's iconic Mongolian cashmere sweater, which starts only at $50,
only
John.
$50 for a cashmere sweater. What is it, 1979? You know what? I also love Quince's super soft fleece sweatpants. Ooh. Oh, my gosh. A major upgrade from my old sweatpants. I was going to
say the neighbors are talking, John.
Yeah.
Could you not mow
Not anymore.
And put on a shirt. John, how does Quince do it? How do they keep prices 50 to 80% below similar brands?
Well, Dave, listen. Okay. They partner directly with top factories and cut out the cost of the middleman.
Oh, what a move.
But their stuff is so good, even the middleman still shops at Quince, despite his frustration about being left behind.
Oh, my gosh. Just like that book from the 90s. It's also good that Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel.
That's right. Listen, luxuriate in coziness without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/Dadville for a 365-day return. You heard me.
Wow.
365-day returns. If my math is correct, that's about a year.
Almost
Plus
a year.
Free shipping on your order.
That's QUINCE.com/Dadville to get free shipping and 365-day returns, almost a whole year. Quince.com/Dadville.
Because the meat section in the back is weird.
Well, that statement lifted out of any conversation.
It actually can apply to a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
It is portable and potable.
Use it as many times as you can.
Yeah, it is.
Pull the quote.
Hi, I'm Dave Barnes.
And I'm John McLaughlin.
And welcome to Dadville.
Dadville's a podcast where we talk about life, love, and the pursuit of awesome dadding.
It's funny thoughts and deep talks.
So please, enjoy your time here in Dadville and enjoy this episode with...
Annie Downs.
Dave, get it together. Our boss is here.
Well, I wanted to say, for those who are tuned in right now and you're thinking, it feels like I'm listening to a power surge.
Yep.
It feels like there's someone in the room.
Maybe you just lost power. You have to go reset the breaker because too much is coming through.
Or your heater is on in your seat in your car. That's the power surge.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Check on
Especially after I've had some Jets pizza. It always feels like that. But I will... We have with us Annie F. Downs, who is the owner-runner of the podcast network that Dadville is on. And so John and I, you can hear our voices quiver. There's a nervousness.
Look, you can hear our voices because of Annie F. Downs.
Well, I would normally say no, except that y'all are the reason we started the network.
Don't do that.
That's 100% true. Y'all had an entire season of Dadville done and said, what do we do? And me and Kelly Haywood were like, we've got to start a network because we have got to get Dave and John making
just
an
to
actual
get these
show.
episodes out.
Yeah, I mean, so y'all are the reason the network exists. Y'all, Emily Freeman, are the two people that we were like, we have got to have a place to get these shows out. So y'all have done an incredible job.
When John and I met, we said, whatever with Dadville, but TSF, we got to get on. We got to get Annie to start a network.
Yeah, I'm sure you thought that.
And then...
I mean, can y'all believe how many people have listened to your show? It's in the millions.
Well,
oh yeah, sorry, y'all can't believe it. Okay, forgive me for my shock and awe.
We're just Did you say million?
Yeah.
Say it again.
Say it slower.
Actually, play it back. We recorded
Say it lower.
No. I actually, when I talk to people out like at shows and stuff like that, Dave and I have talked about this. If someone comes up, there's a hierarchy of sort of comments that people can make.
Yes.
They can come up and be like, "Oh my gosh, I love your voice." And as an artist, you're like, "Okay, so I'm not a great. You don't think
Songs
I can play the piano?
Yeah,
Oh,
my
wow.
songs aren't good.
Or my songs are. If they're like, your lyrics are
I'm not
amazing, I'm like,
handsome.
what about my melodies? But if they come up and they're like, I love the podcast my wife and I have been listening to, or whatever,
yeah.
there's no like retort for that. I'm
Yeah.
like, I just love that.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. It is sweet. It's very kind of people.
I had a guy stop me in Byright last night. and
on
talk
your own
about the
street.
talk about the last episode.
Wow.
How much do you love Byright?
Oh,
I love.
give me a break.
I thought yesterday, if there's anything I can't find at Kroger, I bet nobody's gotten it from the Byright yet. That's like literally what I thought. I thought I'd go get it from the Byright.
I mean, my only question to that is, why didn't you go to Byright first?
I know. Why didn't I go
You know?
first? I should have.
Is it marked up? Sure. Sure.
You're paying for the experience.
Are you?
Well, you're paying for it.
Yeah. It is the closest grocery store in Nashville to the grocery stores in New York. For sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
It is the
without
New
a
York
doubt.
version of a grocery store
Yeah.
in a neighborhood, on a street.
Yeah.
There's 8 parking spots because they expect the neighborhood
And the
to walk
parking
in.
spots are for scooters, if scooters.
Yes, exactly.
But you mean wheelchair kind of scooters. That's what they're for.
It is. I get so stressed. You said that perfectly. I get stressed like I'm in a big city when I park there because
Yes.
it's so tight.
Yes.
And they did not But Annie, this is what you do. We're not here to talk about this.
No.
This is
I
your
have
skill set.
Byright. I mean, most of my
you
questions
did.
are Byright based.
Let's start there. No,
Because the meat section in the back is weird.
well, you
Let's call it.
that statement lifted out of any conversation and used on
Actually,
its
can
own.
apply to a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
portable
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
potable.
Use it
You
as many
can-
times as you
yeah,
can.
Yeah, it is.
Pull the quote. But I'm just saying.
Wait, well,
that
I
guy
think
back there is
hold
not
on,
a
say
proper
it one
butcher.
more
He's
time.
not a proper butcher.
The
meat section in the back is weird. That's all. That's my last note
Jason,
about
we
Byright.
have
Is
the
it
quote already
inappropriate for
you.
that to be the name of this episode?
Yes.
So Annie, we have you here, one, because we love you and we
you.
love being with you, and you're basically the 4th and 5th and 6th member of each of our families.
Yeah,
That's where I was
thank
going
you.
with those
Yeah.
numbers.
Okay.
Shout out to
I saw you struggling. I just didn't know
MTSU
what.
grad Blue Raiders on the rise. But you've written this incredible book, and it's it's interesting. As John and I were talking about it, someone and I share this affliction with you.
Yeah.
Of being like a joyful,
Yes.
we're Enneagram 7s. Like we love some good times.
Yeah.
We love laughing. We love being where the people are, as Ariel said.
Yes.
We just enjoy. We enjoy joy.
Yes.
We're joy bringers, right? Not we can't spell or talk, which we're learning from my contribution so far today.
Go as slow as you need. Jason can speed it up.
Oh, thank you. Let me tell you one thing people don't need to do with my voice is speed it up.
Yeah.
That is just
Nor I.
Alvin and the Chipmunks on a
Yeah, that's right.
cocaine binge.
That's right.
But you've written this incredible book with your sister, and it's substantial. It's a substantial topic.
Yeah.
It's not. It is joyful. We believe it's joyful, but it's about your nephew dying
Yeah.
as an infant, which is it's such a. I love that you did it. But that's why you're here. And so it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think of you and, your, if I dare say, your brand
Sure.
to the world.
Sure.
And you've done other children's books.
Yeah.
So this is not new. But so why this book?
Well, your kids are in the other ones.
Yeah.
Everyone should
Yeah.
know that when
Yeah.
they
Oh,
get
yeah.
it, that your kids are the illustrations. It was
Yeah.
so fun to send pictures
Yeah.
and be like, put these kids in here.
That's on their Wikipedia pages, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, it's one of the reasons I was hoping I get to talk to y'all about it is y'all lived it with me, right? Like y'all, I'm going to cry early.
There's going to be anybody
Yeah.
listening. I am. If you don't hear me talking, assume I'm crying. That's
Yeah.
how this episode
Yeah.
is going to be.
There were just so many times in the middle of TJ's life. He lived for 56 days. And I was back up and down between Nashville and Atlanta. And I would come here to y'all's families when I was here. And just like Xana would ask, how's TJ? Xana still says, how's Sam doing? And so this is such an important, y'all are such an important part of the story for me. But my sister and her husband, when they got pregnant, they found out at 10 weeks that there was something wrong with TJ. So,
Which is so
early. And told the rest of the family a few weeks, months after that, once they had some more clarity around it. And it's a funny thing, right? Because as people of faith and a family of faith, it was, well, we plan for what doctors say, we hope for what God can do.
Wow.
and kind of just go the whole time. And, God bless my sister Tatum for, you're getting more pregnant all the time and people are stopping you everywhere. And she knows that the diagnosis is.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Right.
She knows. One of the places that it happened most profoundly, we were all together. We were at the Sounds game for the That Sounds Fun birthday. If you remember when That Sounds Fun
I
turned
do remember. Absolutely.
3, 2, I can't remember, 22, so our second year. And we did a big party and all these people, she was in line for something and I was with her and all these people kept talking to her. That was in May and TJ was born in June. So she was very pregnant. And meanwhile, we know this baby is most likely not going to live.
Oh my gosh.
But,
I did not even think about
I hadn't either.
So how did she handle those situations?
I mean, it was always, thank you so much. Like, are you excited? Yeah, we're excited to get to have another kid. I think she tried to tell the truth the whole time. But do you know what's interesting is as we're recording this, we announced that the book was coming out 3 days ago. And we knew there were a lot of families impacted by infant death in their family, from miscarriage to stillbirth to tough medical decisions to SIDS, all sorts of things. But I mean, the reel that I put on Instagram about it has 600,000 views in 3 days.
Good night.
Right. And the book has gone on. It doesn't come out for a few more weeks as we're recording. And it is stayed in the top 600 books on Amazon for days. So what that is telling us, sadly, is that we are one of a lot of families. And a lot of the Dadville families listening have experienced miscarriage or stillbirth or any amount of loss of a child in the family. I mean, even in our covenant world, we've experienced the loss of children in our families. And so as we were getting close to TJ being born, I was getting ready to go to Atlanta for his birth in June. And I was driving from Franklin to Nashville. And at this point, I had called Mayor of Dadville, Dave Thomas. I had called Sissy Goff. I had called pastors that we all know and love and been like, can you give me a resource? Because my nephew Sam is 2 and we just need something. Like we have not dealt with a grief like this. We certainly don't know how to walk a 2-year-old through a grief like this. No one had anything.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, John, it was like there's this one book that a lot of people read, but it's not gospel centric and it's fine, but it doesn't tell a gospel story. And then they'd be like, well, there's this video you can watch or here's another book. But there just wasn't one.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I mean, and at the time I wasn't thinking about writing a book called Where Did TJ Go? I was thinking about Sam.
Yeah.
And so I was driving from Franklin to Nashville and just sobbing in my car. And I start telling myself this story. And I'm just holding my phone, voice recording it, and just going like, well, here's what happened to TJ. He was diagnosed with trisomy 18, which means your heart doesn't ever fully form, your lungs don't ever fully form. For TJ, one of his arms didn't ever fully form. And it's just a life-limiting diagnosis. There's just, you don't have enough growth to survive outside the womb. And in that, what happens often with babies with trisomy 18 is they don't ever leave the hospital. It is hours, maybe minutes, maybe days. And so I'm driving from Franklin to Nashville and I'm like, how do we tell Sam this story? And I just start telling myself this story that feels like, not to be weird, but it feels like it was downloaded to me a little bit. And I'm just telling the story I'm seeing in my head. Of like, here's what TJ wouldn't be able to do on earth, but here's what he will be able to do in heaven.
Wow.
And in a sentence, I mean, it's funny how you started the conversation, Dave, of like, you and I are known, John's known for his coffee art. You and I are known for our positive outlook on the world. I
mean, both are invaluable, though.
Certainly, really.
I say that to encourage you guys.
That there is some equality here. Yeah, I get it. But the sentence that kept coming to my mind is there is good news in sad stories. And I thought, if I can't perfectly explain heaven to Sam, I can't, because we don't know, I can't perfectly explain why God hasn't let TJ just live, but I can explain that there is good news in sad stories. And adults need that and kids need that. And that is something we can teach. And so when I first wrote it, I mean, y'all walked this with me, but when I first wrote it, we printed it out at the FedEx in Green Hills, and I put clip art on it and laminated it and took it to Sam. And TJ ended up living through the summer. He died in August. And after that, I gave it to my sister. She says I sent her the PDF first. I don't remember that, but that's the truth is always the third story. So she says I sent her the PDF first. I say I gave her the book first. And then we started reading it to Sam. And then at that point, I sent it to my agent, and I just said, hey, will you just ask the publisher? This is a really niche book that there may not be a need for it, but we needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And the publisher, Revell, was like, we absolutely need to do this. And so here it is 2.5 years later that we're making it available to families. The number one thing we're hearing from the families who have read it is, and David Thomas actually wrote a letter in the back for parents to help parents process it. But the number one thing parents have said is we needed something to jumpstart a conversation we didn't know how to have.
John, whoa. I didn't know if you were awake.
I love it when you wake me up like that.
Oh, I just love that you woke up laughing. Do
you
have a business idea you've been putting off starting?
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Right off the bat.
Listen.
I'm glad you asked.
Okay,
because I sure do.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Listen, here it is.
Okay.
You know how I love making coffee?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know how I love playing tennis?
Yeah, duh.
Right?
Yep.
Well, I was thinking, what if I started a coffee delivery service where I put your custom ordered coffee in an oversized tennis ball, and then I serve. Get it?
Okay, yeah, that's good.
It's like serving, but also tennis.
I'm with you.
Thought I'd get more of a reaction from it. I serve that coffee-filled tennis ball right to your porch.
Oh.
Right, possibly a window that you may or may not leave open.
Well, you have to have good aim for that, but I know you do.
Wait, listen.
John, with a business idea like that, you need Shopify, because Shopify makes even the zaniest business ideas, and I'm not saying this is one, possible with the ability to create your brand, open your business, and make that first sale.
And what happens if I don't act now?
Okay.
Will I regret it? Huh? What if someone beats me to the idea?
Ooh.
You know, I don't want to kick myself when I hear this again in a year because I didn't do anything now.
I have a feeling you probably... Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it, John?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm. It does. Sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/dadville, all lowercase.
Go to shopify.com/dadville to start selling with Shopify today.
Shopify.com/dadville.
Are you looking for an experience that will grow your teenagers' faith, increase their leadership skills, and teach them the discernment to engage with the world all around them, all while taking them on the adventure of a lifetime? I mean, who isn't looking for that? If your teenager loves fun, adventure, and wants to grow in their faith and leadership this summer, then send them to Excel's Summer Leadership Camp. Excel's Summer Leadership Camp is a 12-day experience for passionate young leaders looking to discover God's truth, to discern wisely, and live wholeheartedly. Your teenager will embark on a transformative journey in the Blue Ridge Mountains, where they'll build lasting friendships in the context of community, embark on thrilling adventures like camping, rock climbing, whitewater rafting, and they will receive expert training and certifications in categories like CPR and wilderness first aid. Each aspect of the camp is woven together to help them learn to discover truth, to discern wisely, and take godly action in the context of real-life situations. To learn more or begin an application, go to theexcelcamp.org. That's theexcelcamp.org. Hurry, because summer is just around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to imagine that the response that you're already seeing from that reel and from the pre-sale that's up is not only that there are so many more families dealing with death than that you would think, but also it gives you something to somehow get a conversation going. I mean, I'm someone who, like many people, you just don't know what to say.
Yes.
And then you say something and you said it wrong, and you just, it can be very uncomfortable. And because oftentimes, I mean, what is there to say? There's really nothing to say sometimes. So to have a book like this come along, it almost doesn't surprise me that so many people would just jump at it because it's like, oh, well, we need something.
Well, yeah, I mean, we experienced it, and y'all talked about it on the show with the Covenant shooting I watched y'all parent through that. Like, y'all had to have conversations about our friends and neighbors and community that there aren't rules for. There's not a rule book that tells you how to parent through death and tragedy. And so you're going to say things that you go lay in bed at night and go, oh, golly, well, I shouldn't have said it like that. And Lord, let him forget that sentence and let me fix it in the breakfast tomorrow.
Right.
And, and we've done that with Sam too, of course. And with other kids, we have other kids in our family, and I've had conversations with all your kids about TJ. And so it is this it's why Dadville is an important place for me to talk about it, is because there are so many parents and aunts and family members that want to do the best they can. They don't know what to do. Grief is really challenging to hold yourself, much less feel the responsibility of parenting someone through their own grief.
Well, and I think sometimes it can be even trickier for that. I don't know if tricky is the right word.
Sure.
But when you are sort of adjacent to the loss, it's its own sort of, tricky spot, because it's not, you don't know to jump in too much because it's not your story directly, but you want to do something kind of a thing.
My friend Lindsay Sherbandi and I were just talking about this. She was on That Sounds Fun, and her daughter had an accident on a golf cart 6 years ago, fell off, and has been nonverbal in a wheelchair for 6 years. And you know what she said, John, around that is she said to me, the tangential friends have been really helpful. The ones who aren't direct in it, to come over, to bring resources, to bring food, because my best friends are grieving too.
Yeah.
And she was like, the people that are actually the closest to us are actually carrying their own grief as well. So these friends that say, hey, I know I'm not in the center of this, but I have a casserole, or I have a book, or I have actually were really helpful because they weren't feeling the depth. I mean, she said, my best friends needed casseroles because my daughter that they loved had now traumatic, had his traumatic brain injury. And the same is true with TJ. We were really moved by how many people stepped in with our family that were friends that were close, but weren't devastated the level of close family is. And even as the aunt, it's different than the mom. I mean, y'all probably remember, I would go down there and I would get nurses at the house and I would get things cleaned. I mean, I would go down for 4 days to Atlanta and just work. And then I got to come back up.
Yeah.
And come here and sob to y'all while my family didn't get to leave.
Yeah.
And so there's some real gifts in those people where it feels challenging to be the tangential adjacent. There's actually a real gift in being the tangential adjacent because you can get stuff done that the people in the middle can't.
Yeah.
It's such you said that really well. This is a little, speaking of tangential, but to your point about walking through that with your sister, it was interesting with what happened at Covenant, because I watched people. It was one of the most fascinating things about that season, because obviously our children were okay and safe, but watching people grieve that were outside of our bubble, because I think when you're in it, it's like you being an aunt. I wasn't a family that lost a child, but I was the next rung.
Yes, you were.
As an aunt, you're the next rung.
Yes.
And it's interesting because I saw, talking to people, their grief was almost equal to mine, if not more, because they're having to imagine grief, which to me is almost worse than real grief.
Right.
Because real grief, you're like, I have a thing I'm grieving and that's it.
Yes.
It is. Here it is. What it looks like, the shape of it, the size of it, the weight of it. Where I think other people that step in or around it, I saw so many people that just couldn't get it together.
Yeah, y'all were like, we're going to 6 funerals. You're imagining what it would be like to go to 6 funerals.
Which is in its own weird way terrifying.
Yes, that's right.
And I think when you think about, the story and your experience with it, it's Tatum's walking through her version of it, but you're still walking through a version of it that's not hers, but it's its own weird thing.
Yeah, the thing my counselor and I talk about the most now is you may have noticed this, I don't take kids anywhere by myself, and I won't take Sam anywhere. Me and Xana went to a movie the other day, and Annie came too, and it was my first, I'm willing to go alone with a kid somewhere, and then Annie was like, I'm going to come. I was like, okay, great. Part of it is I can't imagine what would happen if something happened. And because I know what it feels like now I mean, they're almost before summer of 22, there was the version of Annie that didn't know, and now Annie knows.
Yeah.
Right. And now I know that kids die. And I don't, I mean, I knew kids died, but I didn't know kids died.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, I won't be in a car by myself with a kid yet. My counselor says I will eventually, but at 2 years out, I'm not driving y'all's kids. I love them. I'm not going to drive them by myself anywhere yet because I'm unwilling to do anything that would cause a family to feel what we felt.
Right.
And that's so unlikely. I've nannied forever. I've babysat forever. I've never been in a car. I mean, it's such an irrational fear. And yet my, the sludge left over. So currently, besides the loss of TJ, the emotional sludge for me is the tangential friend, like your friends who are imagining the funerals. I'm imagining, what if I caused another family this kind of, I can't do it. So,
so you speak to
group hangs.
Yeah, no. Why does Annie always want to go to Chuck E. Cheese?
Why is Annie always getting into our car?
Collectively?
Well, that's different reason.
So here's touche. Shout out. So yours was, as you said, obviously very real, but had pieces of what you had to imagine.
Yes.
Your sister going through. What was it like doing this with her? Like, what is that input had to be so like intense, like so informed and weighted.
Yeah.
Like, what is that like when are you kind of like
doing that season with her or doing the book?
The book,
okay.
where you're like, hey, when we're thinking about this, like, what does that look like?
An interesting part of doing this that I didn't know would happen is how many people have asked about mine and Tatum's relationship growing up. And it was not good. We were not friends. We were only 15 months apart. We did not get along well. So it's been really funny to do all this, like, so were y'all like best friends? And now you've written a book and you're like, no. And so the interesting part, Dave, has been, again, y'all have watched this up close, has been the change in mine and Tatum's friendship.
Yeah.
That has, I mean, my dad would tell you TJ has changed our family.
Wow.
And in a lot of ways for good. And made us a lot closer.
Wow.
I mean, our family didn't vacation in the summers until TJ died. And so for 2 years, we've done family vacation in the summer because we kind of had this like, why aren't we doing this?
Yeah.
And why aren't we all together? And so it's like cousins. It's like when y'all go to... I was about to say where y'all go on vacation. I don't know if you say that, but when your parents, all of y'all go.
Yeah.
St. Bart's, you can say.
Yeah, Paris. And so things like that have happened. So working on the book, the initial story I did on my own. And then I was like, I wanted Tatum to kind of speak into, when you read this to Sam, what actually helps and what doesn't. Because shocking to either of y'all, it was longer than this. It had a lot more details.
Oh, wow.
It had more,
Wow.
There was a lot. There's like a page about a zoo, and I really went in on describing the zoo because Sam loves animals. So that's why. It wasn't because it mattered literarily. It's because Sam loves animals.
Right.
And so as Tatum and I went through it, she simplified it. She helped. And so it has been... it's been good for our friendship, and what she has said is matters a lot that our family stepped in like this, that family took, a lot of people have taken their different skill sets. Y'all are doing it right now for my family by taking your skill set and sharing about the book. Skill set. I said that in quotes. I don't think people saw that.
No, you should.
So
they felt
I don't
it.
know.
Yeah, we were the only ones that
Your
felt
voice kind of went
there.
up there, which always means a lie.
And so I think it has, Tatum, we did an earlier conversation with someone and she said, I would burn every book and give away every dollar if I got TJ back. Of course she would. Of course she would.
Yeah.
And yet for this book to exist, she said, I thought it was so interesting. She said, I'm so proud of TJ. She was like, I'm so proud that his like life is mattering like this and that he has like lived on. And I hadn't thought about it like that. So I think for her, this also feels like, I mean, y'all know me. I have a sword tattoo on my arm because I'm very like, I'm a 7 with a really strong 8 wings. So I'm like, if the enemy thinks that he got away with stealing this from us, watch me, bro. Like that. So I kind of feel that like Joan of Arc, this is my fight back for what the enemy tried to steal from our family. And TJ is gone, but the enemy did not get to steal him. And for sure doesn't get to steal the story. And now the hope coming from it is like, yeah. And I think Tatum would say this feels like her son. What I have heard her say is this feels like her son's life. Both of them. Sam's in this book all over the place. And so both of them have allowed this in a way. TJ did in his death, and Sam has allowed it in his life. Because Sam, for as much as a 3-year-old can agree to something, saw it all and agreed to it, you know. And he has red hair. He gets recognized everywhere anyway. Tatum says it's like raising a celebrity. He gets stopped at every store. And so it is going to be the same.
Because he has like red hair.
Red.
Like for anyone who doesn't understand, it's not like, oh, you have
multiple
like a
syllable.
Yeah, it's like,
it's stand out. He looks like a
Scotland
pencil.
would be offended. They're like, you are the truest we've ever made.
That's it.
Yeah. So speaking of, what do conversations with him about that look like now? And then how much does he talk about that? How does he talk and think about this?
I think this is interesting for your Dadville residents because every kid's going to handle death differently. Of course, we did too. The three of us handled death differently. But one thing that David Thomas says in the letter in the back of the book that he says a lot is let the kids lead.
Yeah.
That's what y'all did with Covenant. That's what we've done as we've continued to raise our community and in the world is let them lead. And so Sam, right after TJ died, my college roommate and best friend is a therapist, and she came over and kind of showed Tatum some things to do. One of them is get a baby that represents TJ and let like a baby doll and talk to Sam about it. And so when she brought this little like a sloth looking thing over, Sam immediately put an oxygen mask on it because TJ always had oxygen. And so Sam was like, this is how he breathes. And this is how a baby breathes. And so then Candace, my friend, got to say, that is how TJ breathes. A lot of babies breathe like you without anything on their face, you know. And so letting Sam lead, and that's still what Tatum...
Which is in the book, by the way.
Yeah.
The part about breath.
Isn't that wild? I know. Tatum and her husband Jacob let Sam lead. When he wants to talk about TJ, they do. When he wants to read the book, they do. When he wants to see pictures. I mean, TJ, there's a couple of pictures in their house of TJ. But I think Sam kind of talks about it when Sam wants to talk about it. And as he's aging and as he's coming to the realization of Tatum has openly talked about this too, but she also had a miscarriage. She's had a couple of miscarriages before Sam, and one of them was in the second trimester. And so they knew it was a girl. Her name is Hope. Tatum birthed her. And so they also have to explain to Sam, you have an older sister named Hope, which that's a lot harder to comprehend. And so, but as he's growing up, he's kind of understanding that Tatum has a necklace with 3 letters on it. And, you know, and so he's just leading, and they're allowing him to. And the same has to be true with us as aunts and as friends. I mean, this is what I've walked through with your kids and in tragedies we've experienced here, whether it's an injury or a death, is when they want, I want to talk about it with them, you know, like I'm like, Xana, do you want to, hey Ben, do you need to process anything? And Sammy, what do you need? Or your girls. And, but we let them lead.
Yeah.
And so that's what Tatum and Jacob have done really well. And I hope we're all doing well with Sam and with our other little cousins who experienced the loss of TJ. The others are, Sam's 4 now, and we have other cousins that are 3 that were old enough to have met TJ. And then we have littler ones that didn't. And so it's in time. The book will help because they'll see him and see, there's real pictures of TJ in the book, which I thought was, Tatum and Jacob's generosity to let the world into their lives like this is just incredible. You know, they didn't have to do that. And we could have changed names, and we could have not put real pictures, and could have changed Sam's hair color in the book. And Jenny Poe illustrating it, it looks like Tatum and Jacob. I mean, that is their family.
It's
the
so
illustration
good.
looks just like them. And they agreed to that. And I just think that shows a lot how they're letting Sam lead, but they're also letting their story out, and they didn't have to do that.
I remember after the speaking of like letting them lead and not getting, I think when we don't let them lead, we as adults who have lived so much more life are always 5 steps too far down the road.
Right.
You know, but after Covenant, I remember feeling all the things that you guys were talking about earlier, about that sort of like, you're not in the, center of the grief. And Dave, you're even saying that you felt that way.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I felt that as being my kids didn't go to Covenant, and we're experiencing what we're experiencing. And you have this sort of like, you kind of feel guilty for whatever level of grief you're feeling, because you're like, well, come on, this is not, you know, you almost don't feel like you're due to feel it, you know. But I remember having conversations with the girls about what happened, and I remember Livy, I mean, it brings me to tears to even say it. But, you know, it was they were both very affected by it, Luca especially being a little bit older, and we were talking to them about it, and I remember Livy saying, I've got a really good hiding spot in my classroom. And just thinking like her little brain, her little heart on this subject, it's so, you know, for us in our minds, we're thinking of a million different things and different emotions. And for her, not that this was the only thing she was feeling, but you're just like, when she said that, it was like, oh, that's right. You got to let them lead, because it's very, you know, she's looking at it through the lens of, at the time, you know, a 6 or 7 year old
student. Yeah.
Student. Yeah. And it's so, it can be so beautiful and innocent. And it kind of, I would have to imagine, as you're walking through with Sam on this, that it helped you maybe navigate your own grief, maybe simplified it at times, you know, and pulled you out of maybe some of the depths of where you were, you know?
Yeah. I think it was, yes, John, I think it was helpful. I mean, for me and for my personality, you can't always leave a tragedy, right? You can't always leave a traumatic experience, but I had to, because I had to come back up to Nashville. I mean, I had to, we had kind of made a decision as a family that I would not be public about TJ during TJ's life, that we just wanted it to be y'all, us, people in my real life, people in my family's real life, and I had a book launch in the middle. So I was driving back up and launching a book and having to be this version of me on the internet that was not what I was actually. So I mean, y'all saw it profoundly, but I was a mess when I wasn't on. And yet for me, that is really helpful to, the image I always use is like a whale can go pretty deep in the ocean, but always has to come up for its blowhole. And that is me in every tragedy. And so in that particular one, going back and forth between Nashville and Atlanta was a lot of work, but it was really helpful for me. Because then when I was there, I could be fun with Sam, and I could take Sam outside. And the week TJ was born, TJ was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and then on hospice at my sister and Jacob's house for 5 weeks. And so that first week, my other sister and I ran Camp Sally Annie, and we just I bought an inflatable pool. I mean, we just played with Sam nonstop. I mean, money twas not an object. Yeah. If he thought he wanted something, I'd have bought Disney World,
of course,
if we'd have needed it for that in that moment. And speaking of, I mean, I went to Disney World with y'all, Dave, while TJ was still alive, and my sister and I had a real long conversation. I was like, I will not go. And she was like, you should totally go. There's no reason for you to be here. TJ is doing fine. You would just sit here. And it was such a gift. I mean, we had such a ball. We sweated like we were dying, but we had such a ball. And then I went back into it. And he died. I mean, he died the next week, I think, after we went to Disney. And so, yeah, John, the ability to be a voice that could help Sam have fun, that I'm not trying to keep. TJ needed 24/7 care, and I was very rarely on TJ duty. A couple of times. I mean, I wanted to hold him, and a couple of times, but it was mostly nurses or Tatum or Jacob. And
oh man, Dave, you look. I mean, I hate to call you out, but you look you look and sound exasperated.
Man.
What is going on?
John, I just got back from the store looking for a greeting card, and none of the cards look like they would ever be coming from me. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, well, Dave, hey.
What? What?
Calm down. It sounds like you need to take a look at Paperwork.
Oh.
Okay? Have you heard of them?
No.
Well, let me tell you about them. Paperwork helps guys share things that matter with the people that matter. Paperwork designs cards that reflect the sensibilities, strengths, and sense of humor of thoughtful guys just like you.
Oh, this.
See, you're already calmed down.
I love it. I love it, John. Paperwork makes it easier to be intentional. I do actually know about it.
Yeah, you said you didn't.
With February just around the corner, a better half pack from Paperwork not only gets you your Valentine's card taken care of, but all the other occasions you need to cover throughout the year.
That's right. Birthday, Valentine's, anniversary, thank you, you name it.
Yeah.
Okay, that way you stick them in your sock drawer.
Ooh.
You're always ready for what's
Always.
coming up,
Always.
saving a last-minute trip to the store.
Also, every pack comes with a quote-unquote use your words guide to help you with tips and prompts for writing more meaningful notes.
Visit www.paperwork.press to get yours and use promo code DADS for 10% off your order.
But there was a lot else to be done, and I was glad to do it. And but to be fun for Sam was helpful.
Well, you know, something that you both have just said that I think is so true, and John and I talked about before you came over, Annie, is like, you know, the genius of Tatum's intuition that it needed to be simple, you know, like, and I think, again, with what we walked through and then what you've walked through with, you know, your family with this, you know, as John and I were talking about before, there's this incredible thing that children give us in grief, which is what John was saying. It's like, you know, when you're in your 40s and, you know, you've lived some life and life is this technicolor thing. You know, when you face grief at the age I am, at the age you guys are, you know, it's a many colored thing.
Yeah.
It's like, what's this mean going forward? What does it mean today? How are we going to do this? How are they going to do that? How are the kids? You know, it's just got a million ways it iterates out in your life. And I think something with kids that's really refreshing, and even in the midst of something that's so hard, is it is just so binary.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, well, where are they?
Yes.
Well, they're not here. Where are they? Well, heaven, we think. You know, that's what we believe. Oh, so we won't see him again. No. Yeah. And you just sort of walk through these really crazy, simple conversations.
Yes.
And to John's point again, and what David said at the end of your book, is, and that's how they need to be. And I think that's maybe how it needs to be for me. You know,
I think as an adult, you could see yourself completely skirting, like not squaring up to some of those questions for yourself.
Yeah.
That a kid is not going to let you skirt around.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
That's
I mean,
so
that's
well
true
said.
for
Yeah.
so many things, right? That's
Right.
true for, there's a million times your kids, other kids in my life have asked me the direct question that I had been unwilling to ask myself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're right, Dave. There is something about, yes, TJ is gone for good. Mm-hmm. He is in heaven. There is no other part of that story at this point. And what is heaven like? Well, we can tell you a couple of things, but we can imagine some other things. I mean, that's why in the book at one point I say, the Bible says there are a lot of trees in heaven. I bet you can climb them.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, stuff like that where you go like, well, the Bible didn't say people climb trees, but there are trees.
Yeah.
We know there are trees. There's a tree at the beginning that really messed up everything. So we know there are trees. And
we just don't know for sure that you can climb them.
we don't know for sure.
We feel confident.
Pretty confident.
Yeah.
Maybe there are days where they're off limits.
Yeah. There's
just-
one of them that we've got pretty clear
I
instructions.
hope that one's down.
Yeah.
I hope that one's down.
Certainly
at this
that's
point.
firewood at this point because how that one has served us is not at all. So uninterested, unsubscribe to that one.
But you know, something that I think is really great, because John and I were talking about obviously the weight of what's happened and how you walk through that in the book, which is so well done. And, you know, you make points really clear, which is great, which I think will be so helpful for people because you're not skirting.
And y'all read this whole thing, didn't you? I don't know if you do that for all your guests.
Yeah.
Cover to cover.
Yeah,
Cover.
thank you.
I read it twice.
Wow.
And I don't want to flex again, Blue Raiders, but I think the thing that's really great about it, one is the simplicity, because I think when you are sitting with a child, that's, to David's point at the end, again, what John was saying earlier, it's like, it needs to be that. Yeah. So one, it's great because it's saying what needs to be said. It's answering, I think, some questions that are going to be there no matter what the scenario is. But, something that I love too is the heaven thing. Yeah. It was just fun to like read that. And again, it's so funny because as an adult reading, and I still found myself like pausing on pages and having these daydreams of like, oh yeah, that's kind of fun to think about. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that walking through what we walked through that, I think about that so much. Yeah. Like I think it's one of the weird gifts of grief is for a Christian is to go, oh, I don't think about that a lot. Like what the rest of this is, what the rest of life we believe is. Yeah. And I think one of the sad but wonderful parts of grief and loss is that I think you kind of have to square up with that. And so I love that you spend a chunk of the book thinking about that and letting, and especially for a kid to think that way, because who's better at thinking about heaven than kids? And
it just like when TJ died, my understanding of everything expanded. Mm-hmm. And it's not like TJ's the first human I ever knew who died, but there was something of like, oh, he's a person that exists elsewhere now.
Yep.
Even when we think about the kids that we knew and loved at Covenant, and you go like, yeah, they're climbing trees.
Yeah.
There's
who knows what they're doing?
Who can imagine? It is a fun experiment on a normal day. It is a necessary and imaginative experience on a painful day.
What a great word.
Right. Sure. And so you can sit on the page, you're reading this to your kids, and maybe your wife has had a miscarriage, and you're reading it to your two older kids who thought they were going to have a little sibling, and you get to the page about the zoo in heaven, and you can read our words for 10 seconds, and then you can sit on that page for an hour and go like, what other animals might be here? What else could be going on? TJ's riding a giraffe. Would you ride a giraffe? Which one do you want to ride first? Like there's just an explosion on every page if you need that. Yeah. And if you need more space. I'll tell you two fun things in the book that are kind of Easter eggs. One is on the zoo page. There is a muddy puppy, and Sam and I, for years of his life, have told him have told stories about Muddy Puppy and kind of what Muddy Puppy does, and he always gets in trouble. In fact, over Christmas, he made Santa guacamole and just got covered in it. And so it was really fun to put that in there for Sam, that there's a Muddy Puppy. And then there's a page where Jesus is reading a book to TJ. And without telling me, the illustrator has him reading one of my other books.
That's so sweet. So you're saying your books are in heaven?
I'm saying that at least we know my work is in heaven. Yeah.
If nothing else, just that one.
It looks like it's the hardback.
Yeah, it's the hardback. It's the real deal. But I just thought, man, what a gift. There's this picture of Tatum reading TJ that book.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to, in my office, I'm going to frame that. I'm going to cut out one of those pages and then frame the picture of Tatum reading TJ that book. And because I just thought, man, what a gift because the other thing it reminds us in death is that there is a chance that they remember us too. Right? That there's a chance that they can look over the railing and see us and remember us, so that when we get there, we aren't a stranger. And there's this moment that I think I've told y'all this when it happened, but my dad wrote a letter to TJ, and it was TJ's last weekend. And we kind of knew, the nurses were telling us like this was really close to the end of life. And Dad brought it over to Tatum's house, and we were all doing something else. And Dad sat down and started reading it to TJ. And my mom took this picture, and TJ is laying in his crib, and he is just eye contact with my dad as Dad's reading him this letter. And in the picture, and Dad has it framed as like it's massive in his office. I'm like, how do you look at that every day and not just sob your brains out? But moments like that, and then seeing Jesus reading TJ my book, just goes like, oh, there's a shorter path here than we realized between the two places. And TJ knew what my dad was saying. I'm convinced TJ knew what my dad was saying. Dad wrote his letter on like the side of a receipt. You're like, Tom, get a fresh piece of paper, dude.
He's an accountant. He
just can't. Yeah, it was so funny because I looked at it and I was like, why is this not on a new piece of paper, Dad? But all that these are just reminders. Like, I hope that's what this does for families, is just this reminder that the path is short between the two places. Mm-hmm. And I think we have enough scriptural with great cloud of witnesses to believe that they see us too. And they, and maybe not constantly, they're not like watching us eat dinner, but there's some ability to remember us. Mm-hmm. I think that's true. I think all of our grandparents are going to know who we are when we get there, so why wouldn't that be true of the babies that were babies?
I would say one of the things that I have probably thought about the most in these last couple years, that again, you said it so well, Annie. It's like, it's not that I didn't think about this stuff before, but I kind of didn't think about this stuff before.
Right.
Because it just wasn't necessarily,
right.
I didn't have to. But was just this idea that, when I would think about the kids that we lost that day, there's just so much weight around missing them, like they're gone, like TJ's gone, and obviously that's so much where the weight is there's no, but something that became so crystal clear to me about that was they don't want to be here anymore.
Right.
Once they are in
That's
heaven.
Right. That's right.
Or even better said, once they're with Jesus.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. There's not this like, what
shoot. I would give for another Coke Icy. Right. No, they're not.
Personal pan pizza would just be, and I think that, as simple as that is, it has been transformative to me, because
That's
I think
beautiful.
It takes, and when I think about what Jesus said about taking the sting of death, I'm like, I think that's some of what he means. This idea that like our incredibly limited understanding of it, this side of heaven, is so informed by this side of heaven.
Yes.
It's informed by what we lose, but we grieve that.
Yes.
Those kids, TJ, like, they're not grieving. It's not like, once you've stepped in, you don't want to go back.
Yeah. One of our friends, Kelly Kirker, is a twin, and her dad tells this story of explaining heaven and earth. And he says, when you and your sister were in your mother's womb, you would have said, "Don't ever make me leave." And he said, and I could not have explained to you college. I could not have explained to you what college was going to be like and how you would love it and what it would be like to be an adult. All we knew is that you had to leave where you were in order to go into the next. And he was like, that's heaven and earth. Wow. Like, we think, I can't imagine leaving the safety of my mom's belly. Yeah. And Jesus is like, but there's a college. Like, there's this whole other world outside of here once you're outside of here. And that has really stuck with me, of going, oh, I can't imagine. And our friends from Covenant and TJ and our grandparents, people that we love, we've had multiple people reach out to me since we announced where did TJ go, saying, my husband just passed. Can I read this to my kids? We've had a friend die. Can I read this to my kids? And while it is about an infant death, hopefully the exploration of heaven is a gift to families, no matter who they've lost. But you go like, yeah, it is that, Dave. It is that we don't understand what we don't understand because we're on this side of heaven. And Jesus didn't say he takes away all of death. It just is the sting is gone.
Yeah.
And that has mattered to me.
But it's like, I think about your dad having that picture in his room, in his office. And I'm like, I think some of why he's able to look at that is because he understands a little bit of this.
Yeah.
That it's like, yes, we miss him, but that's not the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, this is, you're standing in this weird dimension in that moment where it's like he was about to leave, but he's in a better place.
Yes.
I grieve him because he's gone, but I also rejoice because he's there.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's navigating those really weird liminal spaces that you kind of go like, how do I navigate? And it just took, I don't know a better way to say it than, and granted, these are not family members of mine. These are not people that,
but very
I'm that close to.
friends,
Yes,
close
absolutely.
families. Yeah.
So I can't speak to that at all. But I do think from my experience in it, it really was like, wow, that does take some of that away. It doesn't take the grief. It doesn't take the loss. But if I really believe what I say I believe, it's accompanied by this joy
Yeah.
at the same time.
Good news, even in sad stories.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many parents. I mean, the tragedy of the tragedy is that the parents where we have the Technicolor grief have to parent their children in their binary grief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is just so challenging. I've watched y'all do it. I watched Jacob do it. And that is so challenging. And so I just want to say to Dadville residents, we also recognize the leaps you are doing to show up as the parent when you want to lay in your bed, and some days do, and we see you and support that, like where you think, I don't know how I'm going to survive the loss we just experienced, much less parent my other children or support my spouse, or we see you. That is it is an impossible task.
I would love to know like what the stats are. If we could somehow do some large study or something, I would have to imagine that, like you're saying, going through it in the day-to-day, I would imagine those days when you just can't imagine getting out of bed, but you've got two other kids and you've got to get out of bed, that it's harder on the day-to-day. But I would imagine, like, big picture, it probably is healthier to go through it that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
With what we were saying earlier, like you're probably going to just face up to it more, by going through it step by step.
The stat I can tell you is medically 1 in 4 women have a miscarriage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 25% of Dadville families have experienced the loss of an infant in some way.
Yeah.
So that's a significant stat.
Yeah.
And that's a recent stat. That's not the forever stat, but that is the recent stat. And that means 1 in 4 of our friends are doing that you just talked about, choosing today to get up, choosing today to parent, choosing today to keep living themselves.
And boy, something that is fascinating is as a husband realizing that stat. Like, I will never forget Annie and I having those conversations early on where it was like, once you've had a miscarriage, it is like you become a part of a very quiet but potent village of people.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was like, and it's like always in sort of hushes and whispers, but it's substantial.
Yes.
I mean, it is a very substantial thing. And so I think something else that's so great about that book is like, that's it works and helps those
Did
people
dads
too.
talk about it with each other when your wife has a miscarriage? Do y'all know? Have y'all had friends talk about it with you?
Well, I think, yeah. I mean,
some, a little bit, but I don't know about the ones that I don't know about.
Yeah.
From what I've found, it seems to be obviously, as it should be, a wife-led decision
About whether y'all talk about whether they talk about it with the bros. Yeah.
And I wonder if Dave, as you're saying, like when that happens to someone, you join this quiet group of people. I wonder if the quietness is due in part to the element that we were talking about earlier, that sort of like we're always comparing things. Like even earlier, as I'm getting teared up talking about Livy's reaction with the covenant thing, there's a part of me that's like, I should not be, I haven't earned these tears right now on this episode. There's a real part of me that is like,
but that isn't true. You have.
But, and I think that you're right, but also that is just a real part of grief.
Part of
sure.
it, yeah. Is
we
grief
compare
Olympics.
our grief, and I would imagine, I'm speaking out of turn here because I don't know this firsthand, but I would imagine someone who has had a miscarriage, I could see them thinking, well, it could have been, they're comparing themselves to someone who had a miscarriage in the second trimester or whatever, or someone who lost like TJ,
Yes.
And so you're quiet about it because you're like, well, it's not it's not as bad as
Right.
or I haven't earned the way that I'm feeling right now. I haven't earned it.
Yeah.
I think that's a real common element.
Yeah,
it's an interesting, what's the word? You said tricky, so I'm going to use it too, John, and then if people don't agree, they can get mad at you.
Try to find another one.
But it is a tricky thing to grieve because it's kind of this like, especially depending on when it happens, but it's such a, it's that whole thing is such a unbelievably foggy, weird, gray thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because, and so I think, and too, how, I think exactly what you're saying, John. And then it's also like, does your wife even want to be, have people know just because she doesn't know how to deal with that attention and how to even, that's the nebulous part of it. Yeah. It's like, how do you grieve it like a death, or do you grieve it like it was really early on? So yes, I guess I don't know how that theologically works. We believe it happens at conception. So then according to some, so it's like that whole thing. And so it is a very interesting world that I think again, that prayerfully this book can even help with that, because it just gives a little more framework to kind of like.
And I'll say something with y'all that we haven't said publicly. I mean, I actually also hope that anyone who has had to make a really hard medical decision that has meant they don't have a baby feels connected to this, but because those families deserve to be served too, right? Those families deserve to grieve. They have had to make. I mean, that decision of this baby is diagnosed with this. What are you going to do? Yeah. How do you do that?
Yeah.
What kind of level of pain do you have to go through to make a decision in a moment about what you do with a baby that is sick in the womb? And so that's been my prayer too, is that families, one of the reasons, even though TJ lived 56 days, one of the reasons we kept in the book that he never came home from the hospital was so that any family who has lost an infant for any reason feels like that book could be for them too.
Yeah.
And so, because there are just, I mean, the levels of grief and pain that people have had to go through in regards to pregnancy and death and loss and, is more than we should have to.
Well, here's hoping that this wonderful book helps, because it is so great.
Thanks,
it is, you guys have once again done a great job with this.
What a gift. I'm so thankful.
And this comes out, when's the
February
date?
18th.
February 18th. It's my mom's birthday.
That's why we did it.
Is that why?
Uh-huh. I just love, here's what I try to do. I try to get her something every year.
Mm-hmm. That's
and
why
and every year I try to spend a little bit more. And this year I was like, I'm out of money. How about a book?
So Annie, before we release you to the wild, you always have, this is John and I trying to be more professional, by the way.
Oh, I can't wait.
You always have a lot of things going on. So we're so excited about this book.
Thanks.
That's one of them.
Can I also say one more thing about the book? There are a lot of nonprofits and organizations reaching out to us that want to bulk buy. And so they can email us and we have a bulk buy way. Because they're like, hey, we send, every time a family tells us they've had to parent through a miscarriage, we send a gift bag.
Yeah.
We want to include this. So just email us. It's tellmemore@anniefdowns.com.
Let me say this too. We have a lot of people reach out to John and I about bulk buys for our albums.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of the emails just say bulk buy.
Yeah. So we need to send emails.
We want bulk buy.
Yeah, at gmail.com. That's
send
our
emails at gmail.com.
So send those to us. But anything else that you want to? Yeah. What else is going on?
What else is going on? I mean, that kind of is the fall. I mean, the spring. That's what we're doing, and so that's kind of the focus. I've finished another book that comes out next year in 26. I mean, finished as in I've turned in the first draft.
How are you cranking out? How many books have you written now?
Surgeons have to go to work every day too. They're doing a surgery every day. I got to go to work every day.
Yeah, but the difference is
Dave says this all the time. He always says surgery is hard, but writing a book is harder.
I say songs. I say writing a song is harder.
Sorry.
Writing a book about songs is the hardest.
And the other, there's two other kind of big pillars in the year that we can't talk about quite yet. But so my year kind of, I know, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but we do have an interesting year of, I made plans and the Lord said, those are cute. What if?
He's like, oh, you.
What if
you,
we did this different?
You and
so,
your little.
Should we do the thing because we know what the things are?
Yeah.
Should we do the thing where we talk for like 1 minute about
Around
the thing
it?
without? Yeah.
I mean, it'll be
just
fun.
for the listener, so it's fun.
I have a
for
lot
them.
to learn from you about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have so much to teach you.
I know. That's how I feel.
I can already tell you're learning.
What if everyone thinks I'm getting married? Wouldn't that be great? If they're like, oh, she finally
We
met
should
someone.
have people write in.
And
what do
once
you
he
think
gets out of prison, we're going to do our first.
You're saying too much. You're getting too specific.
Shoot.
That's how we know it's the fall.
It's
That's when
minimum
he gets
security. It
Yeah.
was a big misunderstanding.
And your Russian has gotten so good. Yeah.
And I'm Russian.
Well,
'cause
touche.
We're doing it this year.
Touche. Well, thank you for coming on. Thanks for this book.
Thanks, guys.
We are really grateful, obviously, for you, but also, I think, for any of us who've walked through any kind of hard season, especially with death like this. It's a wonderful, helpful thing. So,
You are very
I think
generous
it's going to help
to
a
have
lot
me
of
on.
families.
Yeah.
Have some good
Thanks.
conversations.
We hope so.
And
Thank
thanks
you.
for starting that podcast network.
yeah, too.
Listen, thanks for doing Dadville. This is, y'all know this, I'll say it in front of God and everybody, one of the most successful shows on the network.
Don't do
One of the, understandably, one of the advertisers' favorite shows to be on, and one of our favorite teams to work with. So y'all are just really doing amazing stuff. I'm really grateful. What Dadville, what the community y'all have built is one of the reasons I wanted to make sure I got to talk about this book here, because I thought this is the residents of Dadville are a real group of people who show up for y'all and are doing hard work of family a lot of times. And so I'm grateful for what y'all do.
Well, thanks.
Thank you very much.